in the same way that I connect with certain albums at certain different times of my life because of what I'm going through, is also the way that other people connect with my art or art in general. So I have this rule of how I generally do not explain what it was that I was going through, what I was thinking, or what my intention was as I was creating a piece. Not because I don't want to share it, but because I do want it to truly be a blank canvas, so to speak, for that person to interpret and project whatever it is onto it that they want and take from it whatever it is that they will. I'm a clinical counselor, I'm an art therapist, and I do portrait paintings of hip-hop artists. That pretty much sums up all the different areas of my life. Most of the things that I do now, I never had a plan that I was gonna go in and do them. It was just whatever inspiration came to me at the time. All of the things that have happened in my life have been completely by accident. It's all just been a result of me following what it is that I'm passionate about. So I've always been really passionate about mental health awareness, and I've also always been really passionate about music and about creativity. So my life sort of naturally just took a turn to incorporate those into it. This is a really tough question, and I get asked this a lot. I feel like it really does depend where I'm at in life and how I'm feeling as to who I do listen to. I would say my favorite, right from when I was a little girl, was Tupac. He was always my favorite rapper. He was the only one, he was the first rapper that I listened to. He's the first one that I grew up with, and I was the most familiar with his music. And then the next big shift in music that I had was when I was 12 or 13 years old, and I started listening to Tech Nine. And my mind just exploded to this whole different style of music that I never knew existed. Fast forward to now, I still listen to those and a whole bunch of other music, but I really like Kendrick Lamar. I think he is so unique and such a gem. His lyrics, his music, his whole aesthetic, the way that he presents to the world is so important to me. I really like Anderson .Paak. I think he's so eclectic and unique and fearless in being himself. I also like Run the Jewels quite a bit because I just think they're so different and so unique. But I really do have a whole bunch of different music tastes, and it rotates in and out every couple of weeks. So when I start a piece, I first look up a whole bunch of pictures of whatever artist it is that I want to create an image of. And I usually go based off of a feeling. So if I feel like that image for whatever reason captures the essence of that artist, or the way that I interpret them, or the way that I'm trying to portray them, that's the image that I'll go towards. And then after that, I tend to shut myself off in my studio, play their music constantly for days and days, and I'll just research and I'll try to learn as much as I can about that person, who they are, where they grew up, what's important to them. And that really informs the color palette that I go with, the way that I portray each little detail of their image, and it helps me feel more connected and more in tune with them. So that's a piece that I think a lot of people don't see, all of that behind the scenes stuff. But that truly helps me feel more invested and more connected to the person who it is that I'm creating. And I think that's really what helps me hold on to that inspiration, but also portray them in a way that is genuine and unique to who they are as a person. I tend to create a lot better art, and by better art, I mean art that I'm more invested in and that I'm more connected to when I am feeling more stressed out or more anxious or whatever emotion it is. And that's truly because art has always been an escape for me. It has always been this outlet where I can pour everything into. And whether this be negative emotions or even for positive emotions, when I feel like I have a lot of emotion in me, it helps me to create art that I feel is my better works. Creative blocks for me, the way that I would define them is specifically with my art, is when I'm not able to find the color palette to describe that person and tell the story of that person. But if I'm not able to put colors and images and pieces of them together, and usually I find that happens when I feel like I'm not connected to the artist. So there's a lot of times where there'll be someone who I absolutely love and I'm a huge fan of, and I think I want to create a portrait of them, and I'll start, but for whatever reason, their music or their song or where they're at in life isn't resonating with me right now. So I tend to leave it completely and then change onto someone else who is resonating with where I am at in my life. So a lot of the times that can be an artist who just put new music out, and like if there's a lot of hype around someone or a new album, and I gravitate towards it, I feel inspired, it's very easy, and then it's received very well by a lot of people. But a lot of times what happens to me, and I feel a lot of resistance, is when new music comes out and it's something that I'm really passionate about and I'm really excited to, but for whatever reason, the place that I'm at in life and where the album comes in just doesn't mesh very well. So what I tend to do is look for the artist that I've been listening to a lot lately, or who I've been drawn to for whatever reason it is lately, and I go from that versus what is popular at the time, and I find that that helps me feel a lot more authentic in what it is that I'm doing. This is something that I used to struggle with quite a bit because I had such a specific intention in mind. I'm a big believer in setting intentions for whatever it is that I do. So I would have a specific mood or a specific way that I would want to portray the person that I was doing. And I used to get very, very frustrated when it wasn't received the way that I had intended it to. But over the years, I think that's turned into a really beautiful aspect of my art and of art in general, is that it really is so subjective. In the same way that I connect with certain albums at certain different times of my life because of what I'm going through, is also the way that other people connect with my art or art in general. So I have this rule of how I generally do not explain what it was that I was going through, what I was thinking, or what my intention was as I was creating a piece. Not because I don't want to share it, but because I do want it to truly be a blank canvas, so to speak, for that person to interpret and project whatever it is onto it that they want, and take from it whatever it is that they will. Similar to when I'm picking a picture or an image to recreate, is I go based off of the feeling that I get when I look at it, and it's very similar with when I am finishing up a piece. So a lot of my pieces I'll go back and revisit and realize that there's so many little imperfections and things that I can improve on or make it look more realistic or more whatever it might be. But in the moment, when I feel like that intention that I had set is satiated, and I guess satiated would be the word, it just feels satiated, that's when I know that I'm done. It really is truly just this gut feeling that I get when I know to put everything down. And if I didn't have that, I could just go for hours and hours, and I think I would continually go back and revisit pieces and change them and improve them. But I think that would take away from the place I was at when I was creating it, if I were to adjust it or improve it from when I'm at a different place in my life, if that makes sense. And I've made sure to hold that intention and that mindset when I create any piece, no matter how hard it is to resist going back and changing it. Because it truly is like a time capsule of what I've gone through, where I've been, and what's been important to me at different times in my life. And I really want to keep that authentic as possible. Everything that has happened in my life has totally been a result of going with the flow. I never intended to become an art therapist. I was always just really interested in the field of counseling psychology and in mental health, and that was just an opportunity that came to me. And I never intended to be an artist either, which I think a lot of people find to be really random and really funny, but it was really just a thing that I did for stress relief. Every time I got really stressed out, I would always turn to creativity or to have some type of positive outlet, and all of that was a result of just going with the flow. The ability to be a creative person is something that's valuable, and it's something that should be protected. Other people are only going to value your creative ability as much as you value it yourself, and there's a lot of people out there who don't appreciate it for what it is and tend to want to exploit it, which is something that I've definitely learned the hard way. So over the years, that's something that I've worked really, really hard to protect and to grow, and through that I've seen other people in turn interact with me better and value what I do more. I was always a very academic person. I've always been very realistic and very grounded, and so I think I tend to get lost in that, and I would get very carried away with that. And I noticed every time I was fully pursuing that area of my life, I would always feel very burnt out. I would always feel really stressed out, And I struggled with a lot of my own mental health issues as well. And I think that I somehow came across the correlation that every time I was doing something creative and that I had an outlet for it, all of those things would tone down. I would just feel so much better. I would just feel healthier and more balanced. And so I started making it a priority to have that creativity in my life. And now when I do a creative endeavor or I make time for my artwork, for example, it's always scheduled in, and it's always something that's non-negotiable, that I will not falter from that for anything else. I think evolution is something that happens naturally when you're passionate about something. For me, I've always been such a nerdy person. I love learning, I love studying, I love reading up on things. So I think my evolution stems from the fact that everything that I'm doing now, I try to compete with what it was that I had just finished. So for example, if that has to do with an art piece, I always try to add some element to it that's just a little bit better than the last one. Or if there's something that I come across that I'm struggling with, I try to research and figure out what it is that I can do to improve that in some way. And through that, I have found that I've acquired a whole bunch of little skills and things like that that don't seem very big or very significant in the moment, but then when I look back on my journey for the last couple of years, I see that I've changed and evolved so much. And it really is just the passion that drives that. For me personally, it's really important for me to have both of those sides of my life. I feel like it keeps me very grounded. I know that for me, if I veer too much into my academic professional side, I get very stressed out, I can get very burnt out, and I can get kind of stuck in a rut with all of the realistic expectations of life. And with my creative side, it's the same thing. I can get that outlet, and I can have that freedom and just that fluidity and that ability to express myself in however I need. So I find for me, when I have a little bit of both, it really keeps me balanced in life, because I have that realistic side, I have that those responsibilities, but I also have that freedom to sort of explore and play and then come back to my foundation. Two of the biggest things that I've been practicing for the last 4 or 5 years have been journaling and meditation. And these are things that I used to sort of turn my nose up at, and I thought they weren't very helpful at all. I knew a lot of people who did them, but it never really resonated with me until I began writing for myself. And journaling has been something that's been so helpful because it just helps externalize all of the things that are going on inside of my head. I am naturally a very introverted person. I'm very reserved, so I keep a lot of things to myself. But as a result of that, it tends to all build up inside of me. So journaling has been something that at the end of the day is a practice I just like to do just to get everything out of my head, whether it be positive, whether it be negative, whatever it is that's going on. And that also gives me the ability to reflect on the things that I'm grateful for in a day, which I find really helps keep me in a positive mindset, in a motivated mindset. And I tend to just do better in life when I come from a place of gratitude. So that's a practice that for me has been unexplainably helpful. Like, there's no words that I can put on how helpful that's been. And the other practice is meditation, which is something that I still struggle with quite a bit. I tend to be very scattered. I can lose my attention and my focus really quickly. I always have so many different things going on in my head. And I've noticed that since I've adopted the practice of meditation, all of that has calmed down quite a bit. The practice of meditation and the practice of improving that and getting comfortable with it has given me a lot of mental clarity, and it gives me this sense of inner calmness. And I find that when I have that inner calmness, no one can take it away from me. There's nothing that can do that can compromise it. So I feel like I'm better able to navigate through the world and navigate through any situation because I have that within me. I definitely used to be a very pessimistic and very negative focused person. And I think that is just my natural, that's what I naturally gravitate towards, especially in the earlier phase of my life. I had a lot of stressors. I was struggling with mental illnesses. I was struggling with grad school. I was struggling with a lot of really difficult things in my personal life. And I let those consume me for a period of time. And when I developed my practice of gratitude and I developed a more mindful way to approach life, I realized that I was able to navigate through any difficult situation with such a clearer mindset and without having any emotional baggage or mental baggage left over. Gratitude for me has been really difficult to practice when I first began. And as I've gone through the years of intentionally being grateful for the things that I have, the things that I am, and the people who are in my life, everything in my life has changed for the better. Taking time at the end of every single day to reflect on what it is that I'm grateful for really sets me up with a clear mindset the next morning when I wake up, and it puts me in a better mood immediately from when I wake up. I find that similar to when I was fixated on all of the negative things, I would spiral downwards into this negative, horrible cycle. And now I'm doing the exact opposite. When I focus on all the things that I'm grateful for, it becomes easier and it spirals upwards in a sense. The more that I spend each moment intentionally looking for something to be grateful for, the easier it becomes to look for it. And I started seeing all of these little things in my life that were always there, but that I let be overshadowed by the difficult things that were happening in my life. It's really difficult when you have that fear of being judged or that fear of the unknown, especially if it's something that you haven't ever discussed before. There's a couple of things that I like to tell people who are nervous or scared to talk about it. First of all, you need to really find someone that you can trust. Trust and feeling safe and contained in what it is that you're talking about is going to make a world of a difference, especially if it is something that's really difficult and really traumatic for you. You need to know that it's going into a safe container, whether that be a person or some type of an outlet that you do that where you can contain things. I think there is a lot of courage and a lot of bravery that it takes to be able to reach out for someone. I think for all people, especially in our society, we tend to think that there is a lot of bravery and courage in keeping things to yourself, but it's actually quite a bit the opposite. And that's where a lot of those really deep connections form with people. You start to realize that so many other people are going through these exact same things. Mental illnesses and just issues with your mental health are so common and so normalized, so they need to be talked about in a normalized way. And that's where a lot of these changes are actually going to happen. I'm super biased because, of course, I think art therapy is amazing. But one of the things that I like to tell people is that it's really effective when words just aren't enough. A lot of the things that happen in our lives are encoded through sensory experiences. So whether this be really positive or really negative, we tend to incorporate things as senses. So for me, I'm a very visual person. I'll always remember what something looked like or a specific color. For other people, it can be smells. I know a lot of people who have smells attached to things, or they'll remember the way something sounded. And when we try to attach words onto that, it can be really hard to access those and to explain those. So that's really where art therapy comes in, because it allows you to connect with all of those sensory experiences of life, of what we experience and how we encode things, and have an outlet for them, a safe and contained outlet, which then you can use as a bridge to talk about things if you so choose. Also, I always remind people that as kids, our first primary language is art. That's how we first communicate with the world. There's no kid that I know that didn't have crayons and a piece of paper and would spend hours drawing pictures and giving them to all their family members. It really is ingrained in us as a form of communication, but we tend to lose that the older that we get. So I think it's really important, and it's something that's so universal. I mean, every culture, every age group, every nationality, ethnicity can appreciate art and has art as a part of their culture. So why don't we utilize that to actually heal ourselves? I don't think anything is truly a loss if you don't take something away from it or learn something from it. It only is truly like a completely negative situation if you fall to the floor in pity and take nothing away from it and then continue to repeat that over and over again. I think that's a natural part of the evolution process, is you're not always going to come out on top. You're not always going to be doing things perfectly, but that's how we grow and that's how we evolve. And it's what you do with that experience of losing, if you want to call it that, and what you turn it into. And wins for me personally is something that I still really struggle with, as it goes hand in hand with my mindfulness practice, is really being able to be in that moment and enjoy it and appreciate it for what it is. I struggle with that quite a bit. So my mind's always going on to the next thing. What am I gonna do next, or what am I gonna move on to next? So some advice I could give for people, but also for myself, is to actually sit and enjoy it and appreciate it for what it is. Because if you're not taking that from it either, then what's the point? There's two things that I would say for these people too. The first one would be to find your support system. Find who it is that you truly and genuinely connect with, and not just people who you think will benefit you in some type of way. That's personally for me where I feel the most inspiration. That's where I feel the most support. That's where I feel the most at home and in my element, and that's where the most beautiful things are born from, I think, personally. And the other thing is, for a lot of people, I think they tend to fear judgment, or they fear what people are going to say. And what I always tell people for that is, people are gonna say things anyways, and you might as well do what it is that you've always wanted to, and don't let the fear of someone saying something about you hold you back, because whether you're doing great or whether you're not doing anything at all, people are still gonna make those comments. You might as well evolve and grow for yourself and put something out to the world, because you never know how much love and new opportunities you're going to get back from it.